so you will be able to access it later on. We will share which platform we are uploading this webinar to, and the slides will also be available for consultation in the future. So don't worry about that. You will have access to the information. In this session, we're gonna start talking about the key facts on the GDPR and how this new European regulation is affecting corporate communication and how corporates and businesses are communicating, not only internally but also with customers externally. We will do a brief review of the GDPR and then what are the challenges for using tools to comply with this new regulation. And on the second module, we will be talking about some of the traditional challenges in deploying a new unified communication tool, and what should a company expect out of these tools, and how they are handling all the hurdles in communications inside the business. So starting with the state of the art of the regulation, probably all of you here know already about the European law GDPR, which came into force 7 months ago in March this year. It's an extremely simple law in concept, but hideously complicated to comply with. And it affects not only European companies, it affects any business that is dealing with European citizens or is taking information from European citizens. So it doesn't matter if you are a European company, it doesn't matter where you are located. If you are dealing with Europe, you will have to abide to this law. What this law is trying is getting users more in control of their own information, and basically also reverse the burden of proof to the companies for proving that they are actually being compliant about data protection. They are guilty until they prove the opposite. So this is really important because fines for non-compliance go up to 4% of the company revenue or 20 million euros. That's huge fines, and that's a deterrent for actually not complying with the law. So there has been a lot of coming and going for companies in the European Union for complying. Probably a lot of you got 1,000 emails a few months ago about how the data protection was changing. So a lot of it is a hot pot, a lot of traction and a lot of movement on this area, right? But Europe is not the only country that is actually worried about data protection. And as a matter of fact, most countries around the world are trying to adapt or adopt the European model of data protection, not only because data protection is important or governments think that data protection is something to take into consideration, but also because the European regulation wouldn't let data transfers to third countries if they don't comply with GDPR. So it's actually more of an enforcement of the European Union in the case that you want to do business with Europe. And as an example, Colombia is changing its data protection law in 2017. They've been starting to adapt a closer approach to the European Union. Same happens with Mexico. Since 2011, they've been developing new data protection regulation, and as I said before, as a matter of fact, it's not only about government, worrying about their own citizens' data. It's more about being able to keep doing business with Europe. So keep doing international business by the end. Even America, which maybe is the cradle of free market and data freedom, they are even obviously to keep performing businesses with the Europe. They are trying to adapt a closer approach to data protection, and rightfully so, as we heard lately horror stories, and I'm talking about, for example, Facebook and Cambridge Analytica scandal and so on. So there has been a lot of media attention to data protection as well, and therefore there has been it's on the edge and on the eye of the public and the stakeholders. So data protection is something to take into consideration, and not only within and without companies, but also how companies and how employees communicate with each other. In the case of GDPR, there are a few rights that are probably really important and that the users now have and that they didn't have before. Starting with the explicit consent required for the company to process a personal data. So right now, until now, this didn't exist. There wasn't the need for the customer to give an explicit consent for data storage and processing, and now in that attempt of giving more control over data, is required that the customer knows what data is it taking, what are the purpose for the data, and what data are you storing, and they have to say yes, I do want you to store, I give you permission to store that data and to process that data. Again, really linked to this is the right to access. It's not only that they can give you the explicit consent, but they must give you the explicit consent. They also have the right to know what data are you actually storing and what data, how you process that data, and you even have to send them a digital copy of that data that you are dealing with, and even more rights that they have is that companies have to have more control of the data and more knowledge on how they are dealing with the data, starting with the right to be forgotten, really linked as well to the consent and to that data control or capabilities, is that the user has the possibility to say, I want you to delete data that you have of me because I don't want you to have it anymore. And that's really important to make sure that you are deleting that data. And even you need to know where that data is being stored and where the data is flowing. If you're going to, is that data going to a third party? Is that third party country compliant with GDPR rules? Is that third party country really has a data protection law that can be leveled with the European law? And all of these are general or generic rights of a customer, but this also links with the way that you communicate with your customers, in the way that when your employees are talking amongst themselves, or even talking with other people, with your customers or with your providers, you are storing data there. Maybe you are recording the call, or maybe you have the logs of that call, and maybe you have the name, or when your employees are chatting, they are saying names and they are transferring data of like sensitive data of your customers, and all of that must be stored somewhere, that must be controlled, that must be kept in mind of how they flow, or otherwise you might get a fine. And talking about that, I'm going to talk about WhatsApp specifically, as there were a few news in the last months about WhatsApp, and this is probably one of the tools that is commonly used by residential or by end customer for communicating with peers, right? And then in occasions, your employees are used to this tool for communicating, for its simplicity and for its basically because they use it every day, that they ended up using WhatsApp as a communicating tool also for company-related things. So that's actually dangerous because businesses are required to know what data is being accessed and what not, and have a trail of what's going on with that information, which is something that you can do with WhatsApp and with other communication tools available or more like end user based or non-enterprise, right? WhatsApp allows you to share, to send messages. There's no trail. There's no way for you to know which information has been shared and what not. And also you need to know what information and what are you storing, and WhatsApp and other communication tools, they are just exporting directly your agenda to a server that in occasions you don't even know where it's located, which comes back to the fact that you will need to know where the data is located. Is it in a third country? Are they complying with the GDPR standards, right? And then not to mention that if the data is in a server that is not under your control, how can you even make sure that if a customer says, hey, I want my information, I want it to be deleted, is it really deleted? How long does it take to be deleted? We all probably in the course of what we usually do, we try to delete our information from a system, and to have a thousand hurdles in the sense of like, I don't know what information, and we are trying, and so this is problematic. And I want to share three pieces of news of the last few months. Starting one new from yesterday or the day before yesterday, where an investment banker in London was fined £35,000 by the GDPR committee because he was talking to his clients through WhatsApp and sharing information through WhatsApp, and there was no way that there was that the information was kept in a GDPR proper way. And a couple of companies such as Continental in Germany, sorry, and Deutsche Telekom, they have been banning WhatsApp and other messaging tools from their phones. So it is actually a worry of enterprises and of companies, even more in some of the industries more sensitive, like banking. In banking, regulation in banking, as you can see, is hideous. There is 1,000 laws, and rightfully so, as it's sensitive information that you're sharing, and also you are compelled to record the calls for compliance. And that's another extra problem and another extra step that the UC system has to deal with and has to tackle as well. So it's not only any information. You need to be aware if you are dealing also with sensitive information, with recordings and so on, in order to make a good decision on which kind of unified communication tool you want to use in your company. Okay. And then the first thing that you might wonder when you are asking yourself, okay, so what should I do? What kind of tool should I deploy? Is you can either do it on-prem, and with on-prem I mean your own premises or your own private cloud, so you have control over those servers, or a cloud-based solution where you just hire a third party and they provide you everything. And there's pros and cons to both approaches. Basically, on-prem is about control and customization and a little bit more of knowledge, with the difficulties it carries, which is infrastructure is more expensive, and implementation usually is longer because you need your own people to deal with the system. And in cloud, obviously, the implementation is easier and you don't need hardware, and the system is more flexible as you are buying and stop buying capacity or licenses and so on. But then you lose on data control and on security, because you are not dealing with the part of the hardware that and the server and the data that sometimes is needed, especially in some sensitive environments and verticals, right? In the case of Quobis and ourselves, we work with WebRTC, which we think is one of the technologies that can help unified communications greatly, basically because it provides audio and video live chat, file transfer, and a lot of collaboration tools directly to your browser without the need of downloading anything. And then I'll give you an example just right now. For example, I'm sure you have to download a GoToWebinar little package .damage or .exe, so you could join this webinar. And WebRTC really gets rid of that little hassle of having to download some piece of software. For the user, it's really convenient just to go to a website and start talking and start collaborating, and not only for the user in terms of external users, but also for your employees. The possibility of just logging in a website, no need to download anything, it just gives the mobility for them to just work in any kind of environment and any laptop and in any situation, with all the capabilities that you would expect from a unified communication tool. In terms of support of this new technology of WebRTC is fairly new, but it's not really new, but it's stable now after 5-6 years that has been in the market. Right now, most platforms are supporting it. Safari joined or gave support, started giving support 3 or 4 months ago, this September, which is great, as it is the last big chunk of users that are joining the platform, right? In terms of working, it can work browser-based, both desktop and mobile, but also it gives you the possibility, WebRTC gives you the capabilities of creating native apps for Android or iOS system, or even desktop apps for Windows, iOS, or Linux. So it's tremendously flexible, and it's easy to use, which is really important for a unified communication tool. You don't want your employees to find it hard, so they have the incentive of looking somewhere else for another tool. So if it's difficult to use, they will start using WhatsApp or other tools. They will try to find the path of least resistance, as it is normal, because that's how it works. So UC vendors nowadays are already using WebRTC. Even sometimes you might not know it. So even GoToWebinar is using some implementations of WebRTC. Microsoft Teams, Skype for Business, they have some implementations of WebRTC. So it is a stable and mainstream technology already, even though sometimes it's not market or it's not said that WebRTC is being used. And some of the things that of these are Skype for Business, Microsoft Teams, they usually are cloud-based, and they are usually out of the box with little customization. And what we are trying to offer and to say here is that sometimes you will need customization. Every business is different. Every business needs its own things, and so customization for your own needs it's something that you might need. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes an out-of-the-box solution will work, but sometimes you need your own custom solution, fully compliant with security standards, and that really adapts to your workflow, so your employees never don't change to another tool because it's easier or They just find it more usable. How we usually think of messaging with WebRTC is that, as I said before, employees are used to other tools for the day-to-day lives, such as WhatsApp or Telegram or SMS. And sometimes it's hard for them to start using email because you have threads of 100 emails and then you get information get lost and it's not easy. So they try to find a way to make easier for them. But then this is not compliant with GDPR and that can be a problem. So what we are trying to do here is find, or what a company should do is try to find a UC system that allows them to be GDPR compliant, but also that is easy to use for employees and seems natural for them to use, right? And as any tool of UC, you would expect some basic features like access to contact list and agenda, your Active Directory. You would expect to have the option of call recording. You want presence and the opportunity to have meetings with third parties. That's at least the basic things that you would try to find in a UC system. This is some things that SIPO Collaborator, that's Quovis's product, offers you. Besides, we have a bunch of collaboration tools, of traditional collaboration tools that make communication not only easier but more productive in a way, right? Where you can file transfer, you don't have to switch to another platform to do file transferring, and you can record conversations and watch meetings again and check if everything was fine, and have easy to set up meetings with third parties, because downloading a piece of software every time you want to do a conference with a provider, that's not the way it should be. It shouldn't be that hard for a person to just connect. It shouldn't be harder than when you have your phone and you press a number and you're calling. It shouldn't be harder than that, because it just shouldn't. So a little bit of we're starting now the modules, the second module, which is more about the challenges in corporate communications and what a UC tool should probably have, and what hurdles are companies finding in our experience when they want a new unified communication system. And one of the main things that they want is that they want their telecommunication system to be a whole. They don't want it to split up. They don't want it to have several tools that then get mixed together, and that fragmentation is just hard for the end user to know what should he use and what not. And one of the things is that we can do, that we SIPO in particular can offer, is that integration and truly bring your own device to a company, where a user can start working in a cafeteria when they're having their coffee in the morning with their laptop, and then maybe they are in the train and they only have their phone, and they can bring the phone and log in and keep working and keep communicating with people in a simple way, just as if they are using WhatsApp, as simple as that, and they can video call, share stuff, just talk with their colleagues and keep working, right? Another important thing is that you don't only want the communication system to be a whole, you want all the investment that you've done before in ERP or CRM or other kind of tools to be integrated as well as a whole, because there's nothing more frustrating than having to open 30 tabs so you can have access to all the information, and that shouldn't be like that. You should be able to know about the customer once he's calling and get all the contextual information and get to know who's calling who, and having all that kind of intelligence by the end of the company, where you can just go to one place and find and be a hub for you and find all the information, right? Another challenge that obviously is found when you have several devices working as a unified communication is multi-ringing. It's important that when you are logged in, maybe you're in your desk and you are logged in your laptop and you are logged in your phone, and furthermore you have your IP phone on the desk. It's important that if you are being contacted, that you have the possibility of choosing your preferable device. And that's that's an issue of interconnection and that's a technical problem that companies have to deal with every day. And having multi-ringing really changes the game. I'm sure some of you had the experience in the past of maybe having a coffee for 5 minutes when you were working, and suddenly your IP phone on the desk is just ringing, and your phone, your personal phone should ring as well. I mean, not your personal, but your work phone, if you have a work mobile phone. And if you have a communication tool, should be interconnected with the whole system. You shouldn't have the obligation of choosing which kind of device or like compelled to what device you have to use. You should be able, a truly flexible unified communication system will give you the possibility of deciding. And that's something important, and that you have to take into consideration when you're trying to find a UC tool that is easy to use and simple to your employees, right? The same with notifications. More and more, your employees are using phone. Smartphones are more powerful than ever, and they are a little hard for your day-to-day work. And it's important then that when something happens in your UC tool, that you get that information, that you get to know the pop-up and that calls your attention, and that you are aware that someone is calling me, I see it, someone sent me a message, now I know. That you have the option of like, okay, I'm in a meeting, I don't want to receive more notifications, and you can turn them off. So it's all about knowledge and simplicity for the user, and also what users are used to. Users are used to get notifications from their communication tools in their day-to-day lives, right? Another important point to take into consideration, one really important, is authentication. Everything must be tracked, stored, and access to sensitive data must be restricted. And a truly unified communication tool integrated in the company would have integration with the Active Directory or with the Active Directory of the company, where you have your user rights and everything can be managed, and permissions can be set up so they have or not have access to what and what not information, right? Again, really linked to this is the user policies. When you have a really integrated unified communication tool, the tool already knows who's logging in and what information, what ID, what capacities, what everything that user should have. And in the same way that you have those policies, and you have the possibility of provisioning users, of creating profiles, of creating groups, privileges, and media capacities, you should also have the possibility of working with the information you are keeping, and having the flexibility to decide and to mold the information that you are dealing with, right? And one of the things that you should really pay attention when you are deciding on what kind of security and what kind of unified communication tool you're using is that you should try to keep the data where it should be. Know where it is, and track the interactions, and who's accessing what, and what are they sharing, and restrict access. Those three things are truly important, because if you have to prove that you are compliant with GDPR, you should know what is going on with your unified communication tools. You should track everything. You should know, especially if you're in a sensitive vertical. And not only tracking what's going on, but also erasing and deleting. If a customer wants to be deleted, you have to do it. You have to make sure that you are deleting that information and that you have access and to check that that information has been deleted. You can't rely on someone else telling you, yes, that information has been deleted, is everything fine? No, is it really deleted? What happens if it's not really deleted? So an UC tool should not give you only the integration capabilities, it should give you the control over the data that you are storing of users, so you can actually comply with GDPR, right? Especially with session recording, is probably one of the things that is more personal. There's nothing more personal than your face and your voice. And if you're recording calls, you will have both of those things. Not only both of those things, but probably you have a sensitive information interaction where a customer and your employee are talking. Not only if you're recording, it is probably because it's sensitive matter. So you are talking. We're talking about really sensitive information. So you need to really pay attention to that kind of problems. Okay. Following up is the contact list. As I said before, being able to retrieve the contact list from the Active Directory or Google Contacts or anything like that, that can be done. And because our, in this case, SIPO solution is kept on premise or on your personal cloud, all that information is under control of the company. It's not going to any other server outside Europe or anything like that. So you will be compliant. One of the problems is that WhatsApp and other messaging tools are exporting the whole agenda to a God knows where it is server. That's not how it should be. You should be able to know what information and what not is being stored. And that's something that you need to pay attention to when you are deciding which kind of UC tool you're going to use. Finally, meetings and collaboration. This is about having conversations with third parties, with your customers. And that's there are some problems that might arise. So there are some casuistics that you should be aware in. For example, when you are co-browsing, some information must be hidden from the agent, and all those document sharing, whiteboard, co-browsing, all those extra features, they have to be also taken into consideration where that information is flowing, where that information is going. Where is it being stored? Who's receiving that information? Because by the end, it's not only about the messaging, but it's, if you're sharing documents, if you are doing advanced collaboration, you will need to pay attention to all that stuff when you are deciding for your UC. So if there's something you should take into consideration, is that keep track of the data, keep track of data flows, keep track of what are you storing, keep track of what you are deleting, and give your customers the possibility of knowing everything, and don't let yourself sleep to a more convenient or easier tool that is not compliant, because by the end you might get a fine that is not worth it. So thank you very much for coming. We've been a little bit more than 30 minutes. Sorry about that. My name is Jorge Caballero, and these are my contact details. So if you have any kind of question, please don't hesitate on writing me. Thank you very much.